Hello and welcome to WION. You're watching Inside South Asia with me, Neha, Khanna. It's the show that takes an in-depth look at the week's biggest news stories from South Asia and how they impact your life. Here's a quick look at what's coming up. Week after week, we've been reporting on the abysmal state of affairs in Pakistan, with the country's economy tottering on the brink of collapse. Inflation has hit the stratosphere. The cost of living crisis is unprecedented. Most Pakistanis are today struggling for survival. Bare essentials are unaffordable and out of reach for many. There are so many today who cannot afford to send their children to school anymore. And if you needed more evidence of how desperate and anguished the Pakistani citizens are today, here it is. In a viral video, a Pakistani man says, "Allah, give us Modi so that he can fix our country." He wants the Indian Prime Minister to govern Pakistan. Yes, that's how bad things really are.
भाई जब तुम लोगों से तरले मिन्नत कर रहे हो, मांग रहे हो और तुम तो मंगते बने हुए हो, हमें मोदी मिल जाए। हमें तो नहीं नवाज शरीफ चाहिए, ना बेनजीर चाहिए। वो लेके आओ ना वैसे तो।
This video of a frustrated and helpless Pakistani citizen has gone viral on the social media, venting his anguish over the state of affairs in Pakistan and the incompetent leadership and praying to God for a miracle.
मोदी साहब ग्रेट मैन क्या कर रही हैं? मोदी कोई बुरा इंसान थोड़ी है। इंडिया के जो मुसलमान हैं वो 150 रुपये लीटर पेट्रोल ले रहे हैं ना, 150 रुपये का चिकन इंडिया वाले ले रहे हैं ना, इंडिया के मुसलमान। तो हम भी इंडियन मुसलमान होते, हमें क्या फ़र्क पड़ता है? इस मुल्क में जहाँ हमारे बच्चों को रोटी नहीं मिल रही है, आप यकीन कीजिए, पानी नहीं मिलता, लाइट नहीं मिलती, सुई गैस नहीं है हमारे घर में, सिलेंडर जब हम भरवाते हैं ना, सिलेंडर भरवाने जाते हैं वो भी ब्लैक में मिलता है हम लोगों को। शर्म आ रही है लेकिन।
Essentially, this gentleman wants India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi to rule his country. While some may find the man's lament amusing, fact is it sums up the harsh reality that the average Pakistani citizen faces today. Echoing similarly desperate sentiments are scores of other Pakistanis who have in recent weeks taken to the streets and raised slogans such as "Pakistan se zinda bhago, chahe India chale jao," meaning run for your life away from Pakistan, even if it means taking shelter in India. They say they wish they had not been born in Pakistan. So why this degree of desperation and despair? The answer is quite simple. Pakistan's economy is in the ICU and deteriorating by the day, and the people of Pakistan are trapped in unlivable conditions. Sample this. The rate of inflation in Pakistan stands at 40%. The value of the Pakistani rupee is 258 against the dollar. There are just $3.25 billion left in foreign exchange reserves, barely enough to cover a couple of weeks of imports. Now let's look at the spiraling prices of essential items and kitchen staples. Petrol is selling at 272 rupees a litre, diesel at 262 rupees a litre, and kerosene 217 rupees a litre. The price of milk has skyrocketed from 190 rupees a litre to 235. A kilogram of chicken costs almost 800 Pakistani rupees. Boneless chicken meat has hit a high of 1000 rupees per kilo. Simply put, prices of daily essentials have become unaffordable for most Pakistanis. In fact, Pakistan's economy is in such dire straits that scores of middle-class families can no longer afford to send their children to school as they are struggling to make ends meet. And it doesn't end there. The economic crisis has also dealt a body blow to the country's healthcare system. There is a severe shortage of essential drugs and medical equipment. Medicines as basic as insulin, Disprin and anesthetics have disappeared from the pharmacies and hospitals. Things are so bad, doctors have been forced to put off surgeries. For the drug manufacturers, imported raw materials have been held up at the Karachi port due to a shortage of dollars in the banking system. What Pakistan is desperately counting on is an IMF bailout, one that has proven to be elusive so far. In February, the Pakistan government and an IMF delegation held yet another round of discussions on a $6.5 billion bailout package. The government had hoped it would be able to convince the IMF about implementing its conditions in a gradual manner, but Islamabad's hopes were dashed. The International Monetary Fund expects Pakistan to meet certain criteria, such as setting up an anti-corruption task force, hiking electricity tariffs and imposing a levy on petroleum products. IMF's managing director recently stated, and I quote, "Those who are making good money in public or private sectors need to contribute to the economy. It should not be that the wealthy benefit from subsidies, it should be the poor who benefit from them." Many argue that Pakistan's elite have taken the country from being an Islamic republic to a 1% republic. In other words, opportunities, power and wealth in Pakistan are concentrated in the hands of the top 1% of the population, and the remaining 99% seem to live in a different country, a different and dark world altogether. One from which there seems to be no escape for now. Big divides and widening fissures over Ukraine and security became the overwhelming theme at the G20 Foreign Ministers meet in New Delhi, with any form of consensus and a joint declaration on the issue staying elusive. The United States hitting out at Russia over Ukraine, seemingly unbridgeable US-China differences, and Russia and China coming together to blast what they termed Western threats and blackmail. This is what stood out at this high-profile event. A far cry from India's calls for constructive discussions to resolve a host of global crises. The US Secretary of State Antony Blinken had pretty much spelt it out even before he reached New Delhi, saying he would not be meeting with his Russian and Chinese counterparts.
Every G20 member, and virtually every country, period, continues to bear the costs of Russia's war of aggression. A war that President Putin could end tomorrow if he chose to do so.
While a host of important issues ranging from food security and counter-terrorism to emerging from the pandemic were on the agenda, the elephant in the room was the Russia-Ukraine war. The divide that Ukraine gave rise to is not new though. It stood out at the meeting of the G20 finance ministers last week, dominated the foreign ministers meeting in New Delhi, and has shown signs of extending through to the G20 summit that's scheduled to be held in New Delhi in September. As the G20 foreign ministers meeting got underway in the national capital, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi pointed out the G20's mission to overcome divides for the larger good.
Financial crisis, climate change, pandemic, terrorism and wars clearly shows that global governance has failed. You are meeting at a time of deep global divisions. As Foreign Minister, it is but natural that your discussions are affected by the geopolitical tensions of the day.
Sri Lanka, already reeling under an unprecedented economic crisis, is now also in the grip of political unrest. Local elections were scheduled to be held in the country in the second week of March. But the Election Commission recently announced that it was postponing the elections indefinitely after President Ranil Wickremesinghe refused to provide the necessary funds for the electoral exercise. His argument? His government's priority is to rebuild the shattered economy, not hold elections. The opposition says this is a ruse employed by the president to avoid facing the voters. The result? There have been massive protests on the streets of capital Colombo, with some of them even descending into violence and chaos.
Sri Lanka has been on a simmer mode for the last year, and a boil has never been far. This was the latest outburst. 10,000 people on the roads of Colombo out to unleash anarchy. Demonstrations were fueled by opposition party National People's Power. They demand local elections on the 9th of March as scheduled earlier. No money for polls, Wickremesinghe had said, forcing a postponement. This was just a new start of Sri Lanka's year-old protest and strike conundrum amid the economic crisis. The government has decided to clamp down as dozens of worker unions transferred to banking to public health prepare to go on strike. A strike ban order is already in place.
With trade union action launched across many state sectors here in Sri Lanka, speaking to many state officials, it was apparent that all of them voiced the same concern. That is, the government's current policy on tax is unreasonable and unfair, especially at a time where costs of living for people have become unbearable. That's not all. The sentiment across many trade unions is that this is just the start of their growing movement to voice their dissent and disapproval for the present government.
The target of protests, President Ranil Wickremesinghe, who the opposition believes is playing political games as he lacks the public mandate to continue.
Ranil Wickremesinghe does not have the vote of the people. Therefore, Ranil Wickremesinghe is not the president. He came to power with 133 votes from thieves, thugs, drug smugglers and criminals. Ranil does not have people's power or people's mandate. Today, the people's power is with us.
Wickremesinghe, meanwhile, insists it's not about politics but economics. He points out what he calls the inanity of holding elections that will cost the exchequer $27 million. This at a time when national debt has hit over $86 billion and usable foreign exchange reserves have dried up to a measly $500 million. On the face of it, the elections are highly local and inconsequential. The importance, though, lies in the fact that they will indicate which way the winds are blowing. The opposition claims that Wickremesinghe, with little public support and backed by the Rajapaksas, has come in through the back door. These elections, when held, they say, will be his writing on the wall.
Hundreds of thousands of people are on queues. There are shortages everywhere. Essential food items, fuel, raw materials, medicine. In fact, in certain hospitals, surgeries have been halted because of the scarcity of medicines. So this government does not have a solution. They only have one solution, that is to remain in power, using all the governmental power that is bestowed upon them.
Notably, the National People's Power that organized the latest protests has only 3 lawmakers in the Sri Lanka's 225-member parliament. What it claims is big public support that will propel it to power. So what it boils down to is this: politics in Sri Lanka over the state of the economy. And 2, economy pangs continuing to pull the nation into an abyss. Compounding troubles threatened hard.
We're living in an era of a slowing global economy, endless layoffs, and an increasingly stressful work environment, with the constant pressure to put in long hours, take on extra work, go the extra mile, prove your worth, and impress the bosses just to keep your job. Work-life balance seems like a pipe dream. Now imagine if in the midst of all this, you miraculously found yourself working for an organization where once your official work hours are over, your computer locks you out and actually tells you, please go home. Don't believe it is possible, right? Take a look.
Modern day lingo terms it work-life balance, and there's big noise all over on achieving it. Yet for most employers, the gap between talking big work-life balance goals and walking that talk stays only on paper. Track the real enforcers to Indore, a fast-growing Tier 2 business metro hub in central India. At first sight, the offices of soft grid computers would be like any other of many IT startups in Indore or elsewhere, till evening approaches, and this happens.
Your shift time is over.
Call it coercion of the positive kind.
When my colleagues saw the pop-up, they came up to me to ask why this was happening. And they were shocked because in their previous companies, they usually had to take permission before going home after the shift was over, and the higher-ups would usually provide them the next set of work. I made them understand that this is not our work philosophy. We believe in work-life balance. We believe when you are happy with your family, you work pretty well.
Work-life balance enforced to actually realize greater employee efficiency and work output. That's probably a first. Machines timed to turn off when work hours end, workers made to go home. For once, work-life balance is about much more than speeches and company brochures.
Long stretching hours office ke jo hai.
We are trying to reduce long stretching office hours, so we built software that has a notification system. The software starts to track the time the moment the computer is powered on, and as soon as the shift timings are over, employees get a pop-up reminding them that the shift is up. The thought behind this is providing employees a good work-life balance so that they can spend time with their families and loved ones.
The management here claims the positives are there to be seen, again going beyond what's on paper, like higher motivation and productivity and lower stress levels among employees, with indications of positives showing in the company's results too. Above all, for many here, the big go-home push has changed both work and life.
Being a girl, it is very important that I reach home on time, as I have other responsibilities at home that I have to take care of. So this pop-up is really helpful for me to fulfill those roles and to maintain a healthy work-life balance.
Long, stressful working hours and the dangerous outcomes have been labelled a modern-day disease. The WHO calls it a trend that has worsened during the pandemic. Figures put the numbers dead from stroke and heart disease arising from long work hours at 745,000 in 2016, up 30% since 2000. Little wonder then that the world is talking of corrective measures, the 4-day work week, shorter working days and the like. Putting yourself higher on the to-do list, that's the challenge, and boundaries must be drawn. About time South Asia caught up on this too.
The 7-year-old Prince of Bhutan has become the country's first digital citizen, Jigme Nangyel Wangchuk. The heir apparent and eldest son of Bhutan's king is the mountainous country's first citizen to receive the National Digital Identity or NDI mobile wallet under the NDI program. All Bhutanese citizens above the age of 8 would have their biometric data collected by the country's Ministry of Technology and Telecommunications. Authorities say NDI uses cutting-edge technology to provide citizens with secure and verifiable identity credentials, ensuring the privacy and protection of their personal information. The system uses the self-sovereign identity model based on decentralized identity technology, which gives people more control over their personal information and who can access it. And finally, the RRR juggernaut is simply unstoppable. The Indian blockbuster movie continues to make waves globally. One of the big draws in the movie, of course, is the wildly popular song Naatu Naatu. It is now a global rage. The Oscar-nominated song from the S.S. Rajamouli directed epic will be performed live at the Academy Awards in Los Angeles on the 12th of March.
Do you know Naatu?
Well, we can hardly wait for the Oscar ceremony, and many are in fact wondering if we'll get a chance to watch the film's two superstars shaking a leg on the world's biggest cinematic stage. Well, that brings us to the end of this edition of Inside South Asia. Hope you enjoyed watching the show. Do join us again next week as we return with all the action from the region. Till then, stay safe and well. I'm Neha Khanna, signing off. Thanks for watching and stay tuned to WION. World is One.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.